Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the other parameters that are available to you from NControl. First off, the sync source and sample rate section. Here, if you're running off of an internal clock, this is one of the places where you can change the sample rate for the Aurora in hardware. Now, normally I should say that if you're running a DAW, you want to set your sample rate from within there when you're on internal clock. And if you're running a multimedia application like iTunes or YouTube or something, there it's best to set the sample rate from Audio MIDI Setup, which is in Finder from Go down to Utilities. But you can change it here as well. This is an option. You can also choose an external clock source, and it will show you the sample rate that those external clock sources are running at. So that's all pretty straightforward. Next is the menu item. First thing here is the connection method. So USB and Thunderbolt are both selected by default, and it shows that I am in fact connected via Thunderbolt presently. So if you're connecting via those methods, just go ahead and leave it as it is. If you're using Dante, choose that. These TCP options are for if you want to run NControl from a computer other than the one that the Aurora is connected to. There's an application called the Redirector on the Lynx website. That'll facilitate that. Let us know if you have any questions to set that up if that's something you're interested in. Next is window zoom. Here I'm running at 100. That was a little smaller than auto, which I think put it at 125. But here's where you can zoom in for finer level of detail on the NControl application if you wish to do that. Under advanced, we have some interesting parameters. So first up is adapter settings. Now here is where you can establish the order that the Aurora would appear. This only really matters if you have more than one. So let's say you have 3 Auroras. You can change them to different positions, meaning the order they're presented to the operating system. There's some cases where that can be helpful. What's nice about this is that it stores that setting in the hardware, so no matter where you use the Aurora, it'll maintain that position. And macOS has a tendency to change the position, the device order, and this is a way of kind of locking it in, so it's never going to get changed from out from under you. Okay, so the next under advanced is show PCIe latency. Now this is a troubleshooting tool. So if you're getting clicks or pops in your audio, what you want to do is take a look at this. If you're getting higher than 4 samples as that value here, that's indicating that your system is having trouble delivering samples quickly enough into the buffer, and that's why you're getting glitching. So if that's what's happening, the next parameter in the list is the one we want to go to address that. It's this one here, payload size. This is referring to the size of packets of samples that are getting brought into the buffer. Auto is going to do the job for 99% of all users and all computers. Auto is actually going to adjust itself to the correct size for the performance we're measuring with that PCIe latency tool. But in a case where your computer is just not up to snuff, you can change it here. I would set it to 32. If you're getting poor performance, again, that would be 4 samples or more from the PCIe latency tool. And then if that clears up the problem, then just try smaller increments, 16, 8, and see how that does. If you're on a Mac, you probably won't be able to go below 8. PC, maybe 4 or 2 is an option. So that's what payload size does. That's something that most people are never going to need to interact with. The next one is set date and time. So when you click on this, it'll seem like nothing happened. But what actually did happen is that we took the date and time that's stored in your computer and applied that to the Aurora hardware. So the Aurora will reflect that date and time from that point forward. Okay, this next one is quite interesting. So it's called Thunderbolt record source here. If you connect via Dante or USB, it'll say USB or Dante accordingly. What this does is it allows you to specify which hardware input occupies which record channels. So for instance, what I've had to do is put preamp input 1 as record channels 1 and 2 for recording this video. Normally it's going to go line channels, then digital, and then preamps at the end. So let's say that I want preamp input 2 to become record channels 3 and 4. I would just simply select that, and bada bing bada boom, that's now how that's going to work. This is quite useful for a couple reasons. One, if you have a preamp model and you want the preamp channels to show up first, this is a way that you can control that. Or let's say you want to do the digital channels first, you can do that as well. But the other reason this is helpful is if you have a configuration that exceeds 32 channels, or in the case of USB exceeds 16 channels, this is a way you can prioritize which of those hardware inputs are the ones that are being presented to the operating system. So it's just an aspect of the flexibility of the system, and quite useful. Oh, the other thing I should say here too, one of the choices here is Thunderbolt play channels. So this is a way where you can do a loop back. What I've just done now is made it where play 3 and 4 out of your software will show up as record 3 and 4 if you have a stream you want to record back into a different application. That's a way you can do that. So this is actually quite handy. Again, something most people won't have to get access to, but if you do need it, it is a godsend. Okay, so the next things in the list are pretty basic. Restore defaults is a great troubleshooting tool. If you ever get into trouble, you've made some changes and you can't find your way back, this is a way to get back to the factory default settings, which is a good square one. Open scene, save scene are redundant from the scene section over there. About's going to tell you what you need to know about your system. It tells you the NControl version, the driver version, and the firmware versions, not just for the Aurora, but for any installed cards inside there as well. So that's quite useful diagnostically. When you call in for support, those are things we're generally going to want to know. Okay, and that's basically it. So I think that's your general overview of the NControl software. Hopefully you found it helpful. If any questions come up, we're always available to help. And thanks very much, and go make some great music.